That. We're here. Good.
Hello,
Hello.
we're back.
We're back. Hello, everyone. Yeah. For introductions, as always. Hi, I'm Dan Reynolds. I am not the front man for Imagine Dragons. I'm sorry if you reached this channel in error. I'm a senior technical audio designer currently working at Epic Games. Actually, I don't know if that's not the way to do it. I am currently a senior technical audio designer working at Epic Games. There we go. I like that one better. I contain multitudes. I don't have to just be that, but relevant to this presentation, whatever this is. This is my job at games. Hi, I work in games. Eric?
And when you're not working in games, you are performing with Imagine Dragons.
No.
I mean, has anyone
Yes.
seen you and Imagine Dragons in the same place at the same time?
That's a great question. I have not.
Uh, yeah, I'm Eric Buchholz. I am currently a technical audio designer at Epic Games, and
This
yeah,
is,
we
you also contain multitudes.
of what?
I don't know.
How many multitudes?
Interests, concerns. Look at this. We've got people in the chat already. We got Steven. Steven's back. Just waving. And if I have trouble with Buckles, I'm gonna have a really hard time with this one. Skurid is also joining it.
Close enough.
Well, is doing something. Yeah, checking out the Tech Audio Tools demo.
From last week, I'm assuming
Yeah.
that we showed the view models, or. Um, But yeah, I guess last time we put together a plan that we were going to tackle for this week.
The outcomes of last week's videos were really well defined at the beginning. Not so much this time around. Also, I'm just really busy prepping for Unreal Fest, which is coming up. There's a lot we talk about Unreal a lot. I should also mention this. It's not an official live stream by any measure. The things that we say here should not be held against Epics. Like, just caveat that. Here, I'll do this. There we go. This is what we're trying to do here. This is what we're about.
So what's your technical design challenge?
Yeah. Yeah, so what I thought would be an interesting use and an obvious, maybe an obvious use of state tree is music, because music is very stateful. It's probably one of the more stateful parts of game presentation or interactive presentation. So that was what I decided to try to tackle. For the music, to keep things follow alongable, and also to sort of make something a little bit more interesting, which was folly. It was my undoing this week. I've lifted a lot of the music from the Valley of the Ancient project.
No Dorian's run this time.
No. I think people are getting, pretty done with that.
Need some fresh material.
Yeah, but that actually reminds me. I did want to give a shout out to the composer, so I'll make a little tag, a little banner for him. I knew I wanted to make a banner for something. The music is for Valley of the Ancient is done by a fellow named Edward Brennison. He's freelancer these days, but I think previously he worked at Riot. He was in house at Riot for a while. And he worked with us on two projects. He worked on the UV5 announcement project, which sort of introduced the character of Echo, and he worked on the Valley of the Ancient
Okay.
project, which
Cool.
reused the character of Echo. So
Well, and that's the music that you're planning to use today, right?
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Cool. And so with State Tree, the plan is to just kind of make a music system that has different states, obviously, and changes the music or changes the mix, or what's kind of the
Yeah. So well, I did a little bit. So most of the work that I've done so far has been to re-implement the music in meta sounds using more updated stuff, more updated tech.
harmonics nodes and
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So initially, if you look through the project, the uh, actually, so if interesting sort of deep lore. um, the Valley of the Ancient was a really interesting project to work on because it was basically the first time we had meta sounds at our disposal, and I was a little bit cavalier. I was sort of the tech lead on the project, and I was a little bit, or the tech audio lead on the project, and I was a little bit cavalier because I wanted to make a statement about Unreal Engine 5. And so I didn't want to use any sound cues. I was like, no, I don't want to use sound cues if I can help it. So we did like, basically was one of the first projects that we did all meta sounds in. First use of projects, and also first use of meta sounds in a project, and also only using meta sound, not sound cues. So
Zero
not
sound
relying on it.
cues.
We initially started, yeah. So initially we weren't sure, because the project actually spun up before the front end of meta sounds was even started,
Hmm.
or at least it was like there was no graph for me to look at, and so the and I was working with I had like on loan basically from the content team, Matt Fisher, who's great. He's awesome to work with, but he was like, this was like his first, it was like his onboarding project at Epic. Is like the crazy insanity of one of these demos, and he helped out with the tagging, the animation tagging, because that's like a lot of work just on its own.
Yeah.
And so I had him start out with using sound cues. Then I had him go back and, and redo it once we decided to go meta sounds. Originally, there was only going to be one meta sound. But when meta sounds seemed like, after about 2 months, I felt like there was something that clicked for me with meta sounds. Like when I first started out, I was skeptical, but I think it's like one of those things when you start seeing the rough sketches, you're like,
Yeah.
I don't know if this is what is this what I think it's gonna, what's this gonna be like? And then I remember I was working in the meta sound, and I had reached this point where I wasn't thinking about the meta sound nodes, and I was just thinking about the design process
Yeah.
itself. I slipped into that sort of flow state without realizing it, and it was almost like this weird, like, whoa, what, how'd that happen? Like like, whoa, and that's when I knew we got it. Like that's when I was like, yes, you're just gonna be good. So I got super excited about that. Was like when I got excited about meta sounds for sure. I was interested in meta sounds and what the future was, but it wasn't until I had, because I think that's really important. Like there's a lot of tools that I like to use, in music production and sound design. Like for example, I'm super into Zebra. I don't know if you ever used
Yeah.
Zebra. Zebra 2, whatever. Zebra 2
Yeah.
is Dark Zebra. For me, Zebra is like that perfect balance of like the creative flexibility and freedom to do something while also having a lot of technical flexibility, right? It's
Yeah.
sort of like that weird middle ground of like stuff works right away, it's very immediate, but also you've got a lot of stuff that you can do. And that's why I felt like meta sounds feels very immediate to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, Edward Brenison, eb-music.net. Check it out.
I
Hire him,
remember
whatever.
looking at the music in that was included in the project, the sample project, and just seeing all the different layers and kind of how they were kind of randomized. Like it's
Yeah.
like
Oh,
an
yes, right.
evolving music system.
I got into like a weird thing about this whole background of the story, but I forgot to mention the deep lore was that Zach Balika did the Metasound music design for the like desert part.
Hmm.
And then we just threw that in Soundscape. So it was actually driven by Soundscape, just sort of it coming in and out along with the environmental audio. It was and it has that feeling when you're in the desert part. Like
Yeah.
it feels like it's part of the environment. And it's very atmospheric.
I think for me, like that was kind of when it clicked. Like, okay, like the Metasounds is offering something different from like your standard like music design setups that we
Yeah.
typically see in video game music, and it was a lot of fun just to pick it apart and um, kind of see what the intent behind all of the different layers were.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see kind of what the state tree evolution of that looks like today.
Yeah, yeah. So, and that's sort of my intention is to try to recreate some of that functionality. The challenge. There's three cues in the experience, the project or whatever. There's a background cue for the desert, which comes in and out randomly, like with its own sort of random timing. And I've kind of recreated that cue. It's not quite the same way that Zach did it. One of the things that was sort of an interesting ambition early on with Metasounds that was was never really taken out of the prototype space was this sort of idea of like messaging, this message addressing system
Oh
between
yeah,
Metasounds.
yeah.
And internally it was used inside. So if you look at some of if you look at that desert queue in particular, you'll see that there's a lot of like, oh, this stem is done playing, and it messages back as like a circle
Yeah, yeah.
to start playing again. There's other ways to do that, obviously, and we can take a look at some of the ways that I tackled that using the sort of harmonics tech. I don't actually remember if Zach or I did the like Dark World one. There's the Dark World is the second queue, is sort of the exploration component of the Dark World.
Yeah.
I think that I did that one, but I honestly, it's just been so long.
Yeah.
If I looked at it, I probably could figure out, but I haven't looked at it actually. I just grabbed the stem audio, and so I've sort of re-envisioned that one as well. And then the last queue has actually many parts, and the last queue, if you look, uh, again, had ambitions for like a native music system,
Mm.
and sort of one of the sort of if you talk about stories, I got sick during that. I mean, that was the COVID period, but I didn't get COVID, or at least I don't think I got COVID. I tested, false for COVID, but I got sick for like 2 weeks straight, where I had like this nonstop migraine and like 105, 104 fever
Oh dang.
for 2 weeks straight. It was bizarre. Went to the doctors and everything. No one could figure out what it was. So yeah, I was kind of out during this. It was already kind of a crunchy project. So we got a programmer to come in and assist. He was working at Psionics. This is Miles Flanagan. Awesome guy. Great to work with. And so he wrote under my direction this interactive music system, which serviced the project. But I think at this stage you could, it was if we were to sort of do it again, I would probably do it pretty differently. Um, but yeah, so that last sequence is actually, it's actually quite complicated, because what happens is when you enter the arena space, we switch over from the Dark World exploration to this like uh, ambient loop that has a very low activity state that waits until you reach a trigger box that triggers the sort of
Right.
sequence
Yeah.
where like the robot comes out of the rubble, the golem or whatever, and then they and then that part is trying to be in sync with the sequence itself, which I think we did a jet event based. I actually don't remember, but basically that stops the fades out the ambient loop, and then it goes into this combat sequence. And the combat sequence is completely driven by this system. It didn't use sound meta sounds at all. It's all sound waves. And the I don't even think I realized actually earlier today because I was checking it out again. I realized that there was stuff that was unused. Like we had stems that we just didn't end up using for. I think they like maybe collided with the mix somewhat or something like that. But yeah, so we shipped more music than we even used. But yeah, there's lots of stuff there to work with. It's actually pretty well piecemeal. That was one of the things that was interesting direction. It was actually a very interesting experience, I think, for the people that the contractors we worked with. Sound design was done by Sweet Justice and Rebound Sound, and Ed did the music. And it was a lot like, we're gonna kit bash this stuff, like
Yeah.
just give us these stems, and it was more like, especially for the music front, it was more like give us this feel and these pieces, and then we'll sort of recombine it and stuff like that. So yeah, so that was the idea there. And anyway, so going back to my thing, what I'm hoping to do is have a state tree that will manage the starting and stopping of music cues, and then during I didn't do all of the implementation for. There's like, so I had this really crazy idea with the robot implementation during the robot fight, the battle. One of the things that I was really keen on trying to push was this idea that audio could drive some of to like try to synchronize audio events with the battle sequence.
Sure.
I wanted the animation to have some dependency upon the audio, and this ended up not working out. And it was not because it was a bad idea in sort of concept, but because you can just disable audio and it should still work. So
Yeah.
so that, and if you look at the if you look at the blueprints for the robot control and state management, it's pretty crazy because you've got like multiple things feeding in like this weird round robin of data, and so it also complicated things to have the like audio system or music system be like a control mechanism. But basically, there's this the music goes into this play state where there's like a loop, and then there's different intensities, which I think we ended up chucking because it was very messy in the mix. But I recreated that system, and when the robot is charging the laser, a stem, sort of like a transition plays that basically cuts all the audio out while the laser is firing. And then when the laser's done, it resumes the music. And so this was for a couple reasons. One is because like lots of times when you're trying to sort of manage a mix, you think of things like, volume ducking and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
That is, it works. It's serviceable. But if someone were scoring a movie, like a linear sequence, a really good composer is going to get out of the way of other set pieces, of other sound set pieces. And so, and this is usually by direction and part of the spotting process with the director or whatever, or the editors. But to me, I wanted to sort of have that idea where it's like, this is going to be like this big broadband sort of sound event. And to sort of create intensity, I wanted to sort of suck the air out of the mix beforehand, so you get this nice contrast with the blast. That was sort of the intention, and then sort of resume the battle feel after it's done.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing was the hero meta sound was the laser blast. That was if we were only going to do one meta sound, that was the meta sound we're going to do. And so that had like all the bells and whistles in it. It was like playing sound waves, and it had like synthesis and all this other stuff going on. And so I wanted that to also be a showpiece. So I didn't want the music to sort of mask it or cover it up or anything like that. And I don't like the idea of this sort of ducking. So I thought, like, well, compositionally, we can prepare for it. We know there's like a charge up and all this sort of stuff going on. And so maybe we could just have the interactive music get out of the way naturally, musically, and then come back. And so that was the concept. That part I haven't implemented it. It's not that it's difficult to implement. It was a timing. It was just time thing. Sort of, doing this nights in between other stuff that I got to do. And so yeah, but that, if you're interested, if you play it again, that's something to look out for, which I think is interesting. And I'd love to see more games do that sort of thing, where it's just like you have these interactive audio systems. Not every solution should be solved by, a mixed ducking or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of mixed ducking, what is your
Yeah, so I don't
transition?
Yeah, that's perfect. I don't remember if I said what it was going to be last week, but the plan is to do a the grenade mix, the classic grenade ducking,
Oh yeah.
dampening tinnitus sort of shell shocked effect, and I'm going to do it in Lyra using gameplay ability system, state tree, and modulation. So
Yeah. That sounds like it'd be a cool one. That was something that I've always wanted to do. It was like on my to-do list, but it was very low on the to-do list, and I never got around to it. This is like, by the way, this I think should be, if it's not clear, in every case that I've worked on one of these demos, it's always been frustrating because I've always wanted to do more than the time that I've had. So if you're ever looking at those and you're like, why didn't they do this or why didn't they do that? It's because I live in like this weird reality where time has like all these sort of constraints and moves in one direction, and I can't pause it and then keep working. So blame reality. That's
of course, always.
yeah.
Life gets in the way all the time.
That's right. Yeah. So, do you want to start, or you want me to?
I'm already going.
Oh.
We've got an hour and a half left. So,
All right. Shall we see what you're up to?
yeah, I'm just
Maybe
kind of
jump
getting
around.
some assets started here. I just started off. I made a state tree called Player Audio State Tree. I'm going to have different. Well, for now, I'm just going to implement one state, and I'm going to call it Shell Shocked.
Okay.
And I'm going to create a gameplay tag for that to use with my gameplay effect. And so I'm going to make a gameplay effect here. There, I see there's a shortcut. GE Shell Shocked. And let's make a tag here. Where is my tag? Cues. Okay, I'll come back to the tags. It's But the plan is going to be to have a enter condition on this state, and I'm going to check if my actor that has a state tree component that this state tree belongs to, and if the gameplay ability system component on that actor has the tag that I'm going to give it here. Let's just create a new one, maybe ability, actually let's call it effect, audio, actually audio. Naming things is the fun part, right? So maybe we do audio status, shell shocked, and do I need to make a tag? There we go. You can choose which tag file you want to add it to. I'm just going to put it there. There's my tag. And now I can apply that elsewhere. I'm going to need a task for my state tree. Is it just a blueprint? And this is going to be shell shocked. And so this is going to be where I end up applying the control bus mix. And the plan is to use a duration on the gameplay effect that will, once the gameplay tag is removed, the state tree should exit the shell shock state and go back to the root. How's that sound? I guess I could show the blueprints that I'm working with here.
I usually think of the root as like just the entry point into the state tree, and then I always think of like if you want a nominal state, I would probably I'd probably do something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's probably the way I would think about it.
And so I'm going to add the state tree component to my. This is the hero shooter mannequin, which is the pawn used for Lyra, and I'm going to call it player audio state tree and assign the asset that I created. So we're good to go there. And so I found the grenade blueprint as well. And so in here we've got an event called detonate, and at some point here we have a sphere overlap, and we get a list of actors, an array of actors that are hit by it. And it looks like here that they've set up a gameplay effect for grenade damage. And I'm going to just copy the same thing and kind of double up the effects that we're adding here. So one will be for damage, and then we'll do a separate one for shell shocked. And I'll set that up. And then over here, after we've done like some checks to make sure that the pawn is hit, this is where the damage gameplay effect is applied to the targets. I'm just going to kind of duplicate this and pass in my shell-shocked gameplay effect. So it's that much is that's kind of this is the new part, because this is more on like the gameplay side of things with the gameplay ability system. Normally this stuff is handled by our gameplay engineers or designers and stuff. So it'll be fun to try and figure it out on my own.
Yeah, the only thing that I am not 100% sure on is using gameplay effects for an audio system. Just because I don't know how.
We'll see.
Yeah. There might be a because I think the gameplay effect because I'm concerned. The only thing so. Audio is usually done in a gameplay queue, and so I'm not sure if what we want to make sure is that the pawn that because the damage system is addressing a specific pawn.
Yeah.
But that is something that all pawn instances across clients experience, right? But you want to make sure that the mix is not something.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah,
So inside of the state tree, I can check if the effect is on this pawn versus someone else's pawn, and then only apply the effect for the locally viewed pawn.
To that client. Yeah, I see. Yeah.
So I think it'll work. I might have to, fumble around for a bit until I figure out, namely that this gameplay effect is what I'm not quite sure what to do with, but I think I'll do some Googling and stuff and probably can come up with something for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Google is your best friend.
Yeah. And to start, I'm just going to print. If I can get this to print, then I'll set up the rest of the modulation, because that part's easy.
This is your state tree task.
Yep.
STT. Yeah.
So I'm going to add my task in here, shell shocked. And I would like to be able to pass in a distance parameter. So the closer you are to the grenade explosion, the stronger I want the shell shocked effect to be. Like it might last longer,
Right.
or heavier ducking on various control buses.
Right.
And so that'll be cool. And then the duration was the other parameter that I wanted to use. And I know that gameplay effect has a duration on it, and I changed the duration policy to has duration instead of instant. And so I think this is going to add the tag for a certain amount of time, then remove the tag, which hopefully triggers a reevaluation of the state tree component. And then it will have a transition or whatever. If I even need a transition, I might just, I probably do, just say like go back to the root, and then it should just end up back in the default.
So just to understand, the client filtering is going to happen inside the task. That's the plan.
Yes.
Are there any concerns about the overlapping grenade events?
Overlapping, like getting hit by multiple
Because
grenades at once?
because technically, right, you've got like a multiplayer situation. There could be like many
Yeah.
players getting hit by grenades at different times and different timings.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm sort of curious.
Yeah, I suppose that would be interesting. Like, can you have multiple tasks?
Basically, I'm curious about the state management. If the state management is the same across all clients,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just being masked by this filter downstream. Whereas I feel like maybe the filter should be upstream so that the state is per client.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I'll play around with it. I know, like, with modulation, at least, like, if we just keep applying the same control bus mix, it won't. It'll just keep applying the same thing. Like, it's not going to.
Right. Yeah. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is like entering the state. The state entry happens regardless of the client, and then
Yes.
the filtration happens at the state entry. And so what happens when like, distant player gets hit by a grenade, but this sort of state manager is also going to the grenade state for a client that's not experiencing the effect, but then they get hit by a grenade, so they're not entering the state again because they've already entered the state, right? Like,
Mhm.
so that's the concern. Would it then filter for them as like, would the, what I'm saying, like that, what happens at that stage?
Like
And that's-
re-triggering the task is what
Yeah,
I would like to
exactly.
happen. So I'll see if I can figure out how to manage multiple instances of an
It's-
effect. Maybe it could be like a stacking effect or something where there's multiple, like maybe I imagine gameplay effects have a way of applying themselves more than once, and then we can just update some parameter in the state tree that will re-trigger the state
right.
tree task or something. So
I think this is a great edge case. By the way, I think this is a really good exercise. This is the kind of thing that we run into all the time in this job. And so and that's the only reason I bring it up, is because I'm sort of like conditioned to start looking for edge cases.
yeah,
And this is why I'm thinking, I feel like maybe the approach might be a gameplay queue notify. Because
well, so does that apply the tag to the ability system component on the the
the
pawn,
ga-
right?
the
So
gameplay queue a gameplay queue notify it it doesn't apply a tag. I don't think.
I think it does, and
There,
I know cues are definitely like what we use like all the time in audio, and so it probably does make more sense to do like cosmetics with it, right? Um, I guess if I was originally looking at this as like as a shell shocked effect as a gameplay, like
yeah,
maybe there's like a UI element or
yeah,
um,
totally,
other abilities that cause this effect to happen.
yeah,
So
yeah.
um, it does seem like there's a grounds for making it an effect.
So the
Um,
gameplay queue is triggered by a gameplay tag. So there's a gameplay tag to queue map, and so on the effect, you can add a invoke a gameplay tag that will instantiate a queue.
yeah. So I'm gonna
So in other
try.
words, it can be created. It can be invoked by many effects. In other words,
Gotcha. So I'm going to try making a gameplay queue notify, and I have to put it into the correct folder here.
yeah.
So I'm gonna move it. And so now I can call this GCN from here. I can give it the same tag. Actually, I didn't make a gameplay queue tag for this one yet. So let's make gameplay queue. I'm just going to make gameplay queue audio shell shocked. Oh, okay. I need to add a thing. There we go. So there's my gameplay queue tag. And then on my effect, we'll call it. And so this makes me wonder then if I'm just kind of almost bypassing the state tree altogether, right? If I just call the gameplay queue from the blueprint, what purpose does this have? Unless it's to, in here, I would invoke something on the state tree, right?
In the queue, the queue there are different types of there are subtypes of queues. So there's a loop type and there's a instance type. So the loop type
Yeah,
would probably be
might actually be
the
better for
one.
this because then if we have if it has a duration, right? Like you're
Yeah, I mean it could go either way, right? Because like if the duration, I think it could go either way. But I think if you go with the loop, it could be. I think there's a way to manage it from the effect. It's been a long time since I looked at gas. I'm sorry.
no, that's fine. I plan to just do some googling once you take the reins on your side. But
Yeah, that's what I'm doing right now.
oh, I'm still on the stream though. So unless folks want to watch me Google.
No, that's me. I'm
Oh,
googling
okay.
stuff right now. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
What you gotta do.
Okay, so I'm applying this effect. The effect is going to call this GCN, the burst one for now. In here, I can probably just grab get ability system component. Actually, that's not what I want. I want to get the state tree component. Component by class. Player. Guess it's just a state tree component. And yeah, I guess I don't know what to do with the component at the moment. Where's my pawn at?
Well, that's where you could potentially do in other words, you could do filtering if like the component is on the pawn, right? Because then then the pawn could communicate to the component that the state.
Well, so I have this gameplay queue is on the player, I've got the state tree component on the player reference here. So I don't even need to like put anything on the pawn to get at the component. I just don't have anything on the state tree yet that I can really interact with. So I need to build out my state tree a little bit more before I can begin providing it context, right?
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to remember is how to link the your context actor. I've just forgotten how to do that.
Let me just try adding a tag to. Let's do the gameplay Q1. If this happens, get a target. Just use the same stuff here. Shell shocked. So I'm just going to see what happens. Ah, that is a empty level.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't see anything print. Where's my log? Where's it putting my log at? Okay, yeah, nothing coming up. I can actually, let's try, do we have a gas debugger on here? Probably not. There we go. All right.
Did it print?
No, it did not. I wish.
Oh, okay.
I should probably just run some breakpoints here. See it. It might be that because it's my own grenade that it's not applying. I bet that's why. So let me grab a second client. I wonder if we're going to be on the same team. Yes, we are. Let me put it up here. Let's change our team size. Maybe. If I can find it. I thought I found it earlier. Team size, players, override number of player bots. Okay. Maybe if I do 3, it'll even up the teams. No, we're all red team. Dan, is there a way to force player 2 to be blue team?
It should be even. It should always either or. Like it should be.
Oh, they're spawning all on red team.
So do 0 bots, and then if you if you play in and then you spawn a bot, it should spawn an opposing bot.
I want 2 local clients so I can just throw grenades at myself.
And they're spawning on up.
2 clients locally are spawning both on red team.
Oh. Are you 0 bots? You have
0 bots, yes.
Yeah, I don't recall a cheat to swap
Yeah, I can
teams,
try. Let's see.
but there might be one. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there
I'll
is.
just search through the search through the cheat.
Just like yeah, do like a just search Lyra to see what comes up on.
Let's just do team. Set team ID. Maybe now I'm on a different team. Where's my other client at?
Well, I don't know which one's 0 or 1. Yeah.
Did I only spawn one? Where's my second window? There it is. It goes behind. Team. Set team. Let's just try.
There you go.
There we go. Okay, cool.
Yep.
Oh. I forget this map. Okay. So where is...
Wait, aren't you in the same? Are you in?
I
Uh-oh.
thought I was.
What? Are you in? What's your server setup? That's
That's a good question.
because that was unexpected.
Play as client, yeah? Let's try that. Okay, well, we're on opposite teams this time. There we are. Hello. Okay, throw a grenade. We get hit by it. And got one shot. So nothing new, nothing spawned or printed. Okay, so I got some work to do.
The what's that function? I don't know. I can't really read it on my screen.
Which this is apply gameplay effect to target.
Oh.
So I'm wondering if maybe my state tree just isn't ready. There's a question mark here. That's a condition. So if we have the tag gameplay queue audio shell shocked, which I think I'm applying from gameplay queue audio shell shocked.
How are you setting your actor? Because that tag has to be communicated through the instance, right?
Come again? So I've got.
So you have the actor. So yeah. So this is applying the tag to our instance, right? Our specific.
Yep. Anything that gets hit by this will apply the gameplay effect to the target. I did just change a couple things on here. I changed require modifier success to trigger cues. Got rid of that, and I changed the duration policy back to instant, just to see if we can get a hello world going here.
Right, but what I'm saying is, like, in your state tree, how are you retrieving that data?
So I've got an enter condition on the shell shocked state that checks if we have the tag gameplay queue audio shell shocked.
And you're getting this parameter from your context actor?
Yep, the context actor has the gameplay ability system component And so the belief, and I could
Have
probably just start
you
printing.
have you yeah, have you set that parameter as output? Oh no,
Which
it
which
shows up.
parameter?
That's interesting. The gameplay tag, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
The gameplay tag is a parameter, right?
No, it's checking. I want to. This what I'm trying to do is make sure that it's checking whether or not we have the tag. I don't even know if this is evaluating yet, or if it's just failing to pass the validation. So that's on my to-do list here. Okay, so it's applying the effect to the instigator. That's not what we want. Let's try getting it from the hit actor. That would make more sense, but I need this. There's two targets. That's interesting. Well, let's try it. Well, I'm going to start Googling now.
Nice. I can switch over a little bit and see. I can bubble around a little bit. That's always a nice refresher.
Are you? Did you start on your music system?
Yeah, I could actually do a little bit of a showcase of the music meta sounds actually. So yeah, let's take a look here. So yeah, so here are my meta sounds. Oh, let me make sure that I am. Let me make sure I'm sharing my audio, as classic thing for me to forget to do. Double check here. Oh yeah, cool. Entire screen. Do. Oh yeah, there we go. Oh. Should be fine. If there's feedback, I'm sorry. Okay.
Get your ears ready.
Yeah, I did it, so it's fine. Yeah. I have like a weird setup, so on my side of things, so it lets me share audio while not sharing like Eric's Vox and stuff like that, and it also it mixes my voice, centers it because I'm coming in one channel. Anyway, yeah, so let's take a look. So I've got here's the desert music, and then here's the dark world. You can see as I sort of started running out of time, there's fewer comments, but here's my desert music. The desert one, I did a little bit differently, I think, from how it was done in the project. I have all the states, and then I just gave them different timings. All these stems, and I gave them different timings. So I start out with a clock, trigger to music transport, metronome, MIDI clock generator, and the MIDI clock generator set up at my static tempo. In all these cases, the tempo is static, and so I just have a MIDI clock generator, and then I cache the clock so it's available all around the meta sound. And then I have a timestamp for 16 at bar 16 beat 4. I stop the clock, and I have this trigger that actually is deferred and then stops the clock. And so the idea there is like I just want to play 16 bars and then I just want to stop, and then I have a little bit of a trigger delay, which is 2 bars long, to let all of the music sort of tails complete. And this is sort of an estimate because I didn't want to like do like a whole envelope manager, stuff like that. And then I just have a simple mixer. Oh, I'm using the cat types. They've been really great for managing my my like cached parameters. One of the ways that I try to keep a clean graph is, you'll see here, let's say on this is the bass, the synth bass layer. One of the ways that I try to keep a clean graph is I like to cache my like layer outputs to then grab at the as a variable at the instance at the mixer space. And so the cats have really cleaned that up, because now I just have one variable per source, and then the mixing is a lot simpler. And one of the things that I'm sure will be the first node to get a node config and cat types is going to be the mixer. That will be sweet. If you can imagine a mixer node that takes cat input, so the channel it doesn't matter, and then has a cat output, so the channel is configurable, and then has a configurable number of input. It's gonna be amazing. I think that's like one of the ones I think ridiculously people are probably gonna be most excited about. Anyway, a lot of the layers are very similar, but the way that I handle this is I got my MIDI clock reference, and then I go to a subdivision trigger, because this is gonna be like these are all like 4 bars or so each. And then I trigger I go to the random. I have like this one's 3 different variations, and I just randomly select them, and then I have up here I have an envelope where I take the clock tempo, and I have a quarter note attack and a 4 bar decay. So this was basically the original synth bass line was pretty consistent in terms of its envelope. It was like all the way through, and I just wanted to give it some shape, so that's what I did. So each one that triggers a new 80 envelope, and I just have that there. But in here is a really common thing that I do on music systems, because I don't want to use loops. I want to do retriggers. So if we look at this patch, it's basically my like way of doing a round robin wave player. So I have like floated all the wave player properties up, but then what I've done is I've done a little trigger sequence to switch between these 2 wave players. Probably the loop was probably a mistake, having this one up, but with the loop I probably should also stop the other one. But like if this is true, then there should be like the stop should also, the play of one should stop the other. But anyway, that I didn't get into that. But that's probably one of the things I sort of identified just looking at this. I probably want to do later. Anyway, these get mixed together, blah blah blah, and effectively the only one is active at a time, except the only time that they're both active is when one is basically has like a tail playing out. And so this allows for the sort of re-triggering to happen, and keeps the things very simple from the graph perspective here. And then, so there's, and this one just triggers every 4 bars. And then there's like, here's the bowed instrument layer, which triggers every 8 bars. I wanted them more sparse, and then I have them offset by 4, so they trigger on the back half of 8-bar phrase. And then I did the woodwind layer. I had it triggering every 8 bars, but triggering an offset of 3 bars. So it sort of it it sort of transitions between, like, picks up at the end of one 4-bar phrase and sort of carries on to the next. And then the lead synth, I did a 1-bar offset. This is I think it's more of a texture layer, and this one is more frequent, so every 4 bars. And then what happens is it plays for 16 bars. It stops the clock, so these stop triggering, and then when it's done, I finish the desert the playback. So yeah, let's take a listen. Yeah. So with this design, and we could see it was about 55, 56 seconds. So with this design, I think what you get, which I think is interesting, is you get a phrasing that is similar. So you get this sort of 8-bar phrase whose construction has a sort of shape to it because of all the layers, that the textures and sort of come in and out. And then it's repeated, but it's a variation. And so you get this 1 and then 2, and then it sort of cuts out. And I think it's a nice. I like it. What's fun with this stuff, and I recommend this is like, you can use this in your Unreal projects, all this material. Anything in a sample project you can use in your Unreal project. So as long as it's an Unreal project, you can use it. So this could be a fun little piece of material to sort of remix and reuse and do all sorts of cool stuff with. So but yeah, so there's the desert mix. Then the dark world was a little bit simpler, and you can see I didn't really comment it. There's a lot of similarities. Oh, I didn't do actually, I think I'm getting rid of, well, yeah, I'm getting rid of that. This one is more of a loop. So the original sort of desert experience was very atmospheric, and then it would sort of play, and then it would not play for a while, and so you had this space where it wouldn't play. And so I sort of authored it as a one shot with that in mind. The dark world is much more like a loop, a sustained background music, and it's meant to be foreboding, and there's sort of this drum, this like constant drum that's just don't the entire time. And so what I've done here is I've got these, it's very similarly, I have a clock, but I kept it simple here, and this clock running, and then these textures coming in and out, and on a couple of them I added like a stereo delay, maybe just on the one. And so this was pretty simple. I didn't end up doing like a lot of really complicated stuff. I think the only thing here is, you'll see me do this a lot. Sometimes when I want the BPM, I'll get it from the clock instead of assuming another input parameter or something like that. And this is just a way of keeping things tidy. So, if I wanted to, I could potentially reuse this and have the central clock be the actual determiner, and this is what gets set for tempo, and everything downstream from that uses that data. So one of the things that, and this is something I haven't really talked about yet in this particular instance, but one thing that I think is a fun exercise and is very much like the tech audio work is implementing stuff and then thinking about how this could be a general purpose system. So in lots of ways, I end up building things in a way that could be reused, and the meta sound itself could be reused with like new material. So you'll see a little bit of that. Like a lot of these, like for example, all my music references are inputs and all that sort of stuff. So, but yeah. So anyway, it's similar, but it's this dark world kind of feel, and it's continuous. I should mention, actually, this is actually something that I forgot about, is in order to create a musical structure, I used for the strings, the string sort of background, this low string background is what they're called, low string stems. There's only two of them. One is like very static, very sustained, and then one has sort of some chord movement and stuff like that. And so what I do is I randomly select between those, but I use a trigger counter to invoke the seeded determinism, and I reset the sequence. So in other words, it's going to randomly select between these two for 4 times, and then it's going to repeat that sequence over and over and over again. But every time you play this cue, it's going to be a different sequence. And so the idea there is that while it's playing, there is a kind of repeating structure that helps to give it a little bit more of a musical feel. But it's very drawn out in terms of the timing. Like it's 16 bars at 74 BPM. And so it's not like super noticeable, but I feel like it's one of those things that little bit of structure that sort of is a little bit subconscious. That's sort of my feeling there. That's kind of why I did that. But that's a great method for handling these sort of random stems if you do want to create repetition, but you still want a lot of randomization. This is the approach to take. Cool. So once we do that, what's going to happen is then we're going to have this one is going to just the Dark World is just going to have a fade out. That's the approach that I'm going to take. And in the task, that'll be interesting because I want to reuse the task. So I will want to make a task that's a little bit flexible in some ways, but it could just be a task that's, separate tasks for the different types of music implementations. What's going to happen is it'll fade out and then we'll go into the arena, and I started to tag this. I started to comment on this one. In preview, I think they fixed this. I don't remember, Eric. I think they fixed this, but It's where there's like that bug in preview 1 where like if you place a comment and then you save the comment,
Oh
like the
yeah,
comment puts back.
yeah,
So I started deleting comments because they were not behaving
yeah.
themselves.
Really
uh,
fun one.
yeah, exactly. So I was like, I'll just comment it afterward. But anyway, this is one. This is an interesting approach here. So I actually have multiple clocks. So I have a clock for the intro, or the what I would call the pre-intro, and then I have a clock for the combat sequence, and then I actually have a clock for the combat loop. So I have separate clocks, and this allows me to sort of do certain things in the clock. So, for example, one of the things that like for the sort of intro sequence, um, that part of it has not a loop. It's not set up as a loop. But for the combat loop, the clock that controls that is an actual loop. And so and that's the clock that I cache is the combat loop. And it's what that means is what this node does. We could probably talk about both these nodes because I don't really think I've talked about them before. In order to get this stuff, you have to activate the harmonics plugin. So it's just another plugin to add. If you haven't been playing around with these, you should definitely try them. But what this does is you have in the harmonics stuff, you have two types. You have a transport type and you have a clock type. And you actually have a MIDI stream as well, but I'm not using any of that. And so the transport is literally a transport controller for the MIDI clock timing. So what we have here, this is the way that it was very clever, the approach that they took here. So this MIDI clock and the MIDI stuff in general, the MIDI stream and the MIDI clock both have this. There's an underlying structure called a song map. And the song map is basically the whole enchilada of like MIDI content, MIDI data. And so in the case of the MIDI clock, it's like all of the MIDI clock changes in your referenced. If you're using a MIDI file, it'd be all the MIDI clock changes in that file. In this case, we have what's called a MIDI clock generator. The generator is literally synthesizing MIDI clock data on the fly. And what happens is this transport function basically informs the downstream MIDI, receiving the MIDI data, the tick position, the like MIDI tick position. And so anything receiving that, like for example, this timestamp trigger is receiving this MIDI clock data. The MIDI clock data contains the whole clock history, and along with that, from the transport through this MIDI clock stream is the current tick, the current MIDI tick. And so this timestamp trigger triggers on when the tick is at this position, and this optional bool that allows you to trigger even if you seek past that point. So this will trigger when the tick reaches that MIDI point. But if you use the seek function here and then seek into the MIDI data, then it will only trigger if you have this enabled. And so going back to this MIDI clock generator, one of the things you need to be careful about is the tempo. The tempo is dynamic. You can just have the tempo as a control and you just go wiggle, 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 wiggle. And what happens is all those tempo changes get synthesized into the MIDI clock data. And so then the MIDI clock data then contains that. If you have something like a very like super long MIDI experience, if you're just using MIDI clock or generating MIDI clock data for a very long time, it's a potential memory leak. Like you can just generate it, forever, and then suddenly until your computer runs out of memory, whenever that is. There might be other things that run out of memory during that time, but I don't know exactly how long that would take. But it is a thing that you should be aware of. All of these tempo changes also get registered in. Now, in this case, the clicking on the simple loop flag means that this will only generate the amount of MIDI clock data as the length indicated. And so what that means is that as a simple loop, it will generate that clock sequence and then it'll just repeat over and over and over again. And so what that lets me do is have a timestamp trigger. So this triggers every time this clock is at bar 1, beat 1, which is every time it starts the loop at the beginning of the loop. And so then this triggers my combat loop. And now this combat loop trigger goes over to this little control scheme I have here. And this control scheme will basically control which loop gets triggered. And actually, one of the things I need to fix up here, because I don't use, I realized that I wanted the low layer to play all the time. So, because right now they're set up to be mutually exclusive. This, by the way, is something that you should be thinking about if you're shipping a meta sound, like a game using meta sounds, and you're doing like music stem mixing or interactive music stems, stuff like that. I suggest thinking about designs that allow you to have mutually exclusive layers. So in this case, I had originally set this up so that the first layer, the low, medium, and high layers were mutually exclusive. So when one layer starts, the other one, when one layer starts, the currently playing layer stops, and so on. And so I can just switch between the layers. And because the layers are using this function that I called the wave player seek function, intakes a MIDI clock reference, and I just have like a sort of safety max bar tag. I could parameterize this and use it up there. But if we look at this function, basically all I do is I just take the MIDI clock, I get the MIDI clock state, which gives me the current bar and beat. And then I just modulo the bar max just in case as a safety. And then turn this into a music timestamp. And then I use this seconds until music timestamp. So in other words, what this means is if I look at this information, the output of this, which is the number of seconds until a music timestamp, it's the current bar and beat. So if I trigger, going back to my my arena map, if I trigger this loop or this stem to play, the start time it will use is whatever the current MIDI clock time is. So in other words, I know that all these stems are synchronous. They're 12-bar stems, and they're all synchronous to each other. And what I do is I use the MIDI clock, the common MIDI clock time evaluation to determine if in the middle of the stem playback I need to switch stems. I know which where in the stem I need to start. The stem will always start at the current time of the clock. And so that's how you can make mutually exclusive layers that are synchronous to each other. And this is really handy if you're, yeah. See, Charles, know what's up. Hey, look at this. Look at that. That is handy. Yeah. So, uh, yeah. So the like, and this is something that you want to think about, which I'm not super careful about in this implementation. But I would be much more judicious if I were like, hey, oh, I need this to ship on a like very, what I've described before as like a potato. If I wanted to ship on mobile in general, just like mobile is a very constrained platform. I don't want to have too many voices rendering at once. And so in fact, what I would probably do, and I say this in the like future conditional, but also I say this in the past perfect, whatever. Past, what is it? No, anyway. I have also done this. I've done this. This is actually what I did on Lego Fortnite. So if you play Lego Fortnite Odyssey, the music, the combat layers are handled this way. And the combat layers for most of the cues, there's actually a whole bunch of different designs used in that product. But anyway, the idea here is if I were to do this for mobile, I would actually mix them. So in other words, I realized that the low layer I wanted to play all the time as like a support layer for the the two, like what was labeled medium and high, but what I felt is actually more like an additive percussion stem, and the high is just more intense percussion. And so I felt like the low layer actually belongs beneath both of them. If I were to reauthor this for a mobile product, what I would do is I'd mix in the low layer into these other stems so that I would only need to ever play one and get the right kind of music coming out. So that's something to think about if you're authoring, dynamic stems for a project is going to ship on a constrained platform. To instead of thinking about, because even if you design with additive stems, like I've seen, games where it's like there's 8 stems of music and they're all additive, and that's cool, but if I were to sort of ship that on a constrained platform, I don't want to have to kill 8 voices just for the music. I want the music to take up as few voices as possible, and so, in my opinion, the responsible thing to do would be to have those be mixed in. They'll sort of like the underlayers get mixed in. And so, in other words, yeah, I mean, this is so Steven, yeah, you make a good point. Like, just rolling all the waves at the same time. And the thing is like that's fine for like prototyping. Like if you're like, does the music system idea work? You're in the editor, you're in the sort of design stage, right? Then yeah, you want to be like, use as many voices as you need to sort of figure out, sort of solve the problem. But then I think you'll want to go back through and go, okay, now we're gonna up. This is actually a really great debate that happens, I think, all the time, which is thinking too early sometimes about optimization and having that interfere with your sort of design creativity.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that is really important to allow yourself that space to be crazy. I would rather optimize big, awesome, crazy new ideas than to have optimization sort of impose itself on the creative process and then just kill all the ideas on
100%.
Yeah. Yeah, the clock generator generating infinite data. Yeah, I mean, in some ways that's just, I mean, yeah, it just happens, right? There has been talk about maybe adding like a pool, like a cache pool, where it's like, oh, you can only go back so far. But yeah, anytime you're sort of generating data and there's nothing that stops it, and you just have to hold all that information. Yeah, that's a potential memory leak. But it's also just MIDI data isn't that expensive. Like it's all. The thing is that when you're working on constrained platforms, or you're working, especially I feel in the like high AA, high AAA space, you're like the whole project is usually just taking so much resource to like run, like all these things, hit hard at the same time, like optimization becomes like, or lack of optimization becomes like a death of 1,000 cuts kind of situation where it's like, any little savings that you can eke out is probably going to be a win. And enough wins can add up to like a big thing. But yeah, that's sort of like, but if you're working in indie space, usually, not always, but usually if you're working in indie space, and some of the like lower or maybe less ambitious or maybe just more efficient or minimal designs in like the AA space, usually there's headroom. There's like usually enough resources for people to do whatever they need to do. But it's always it's like a constant game we play, right? we take up more resources, and then the tech advances, so there's more resources to take, and then we just keep taking up more. I remember when I worked on a mobile game a long time ago in a galaxy far away, and it was not a Star Wars thing, actually. I shouldn't have said that. Anyway, it was like a physics puzzle game on like iOS. And back when I was your age, we couldn't, like, you didn't want to ship a game more than 30 megs. 30 megs was the 3G download limit for mobile, like for iPhones and stuff like that. And so you didn't want your game to be more than 30 megs because then people had to wait for like Wi-Fi access to download your game. And so much of that particular space of like mobile game dev is impulse buying. Like people like, I want a game right now. Like you have to give it to them. And so I had to do some crazy things with audio to like optimize my memory footprint. And that was an indie game. Most of the game's resources were devoted to the physics sim because it was a physics like a physics puzzle game. So you never know. So I say these things like very generically, generalizing these development spaces, but any game could have constraints on a target platform, and it's good to have tricks and a toolkit of handy ways to optimize. And if you can get away with it, if you're able to optimize in advance, like oftentimes I'm thinking about, got a little bit under my mind about, like I can't forget about it, like optimization. I think about it a little bit, even when I'm, for better or worse, even when I'm in that sort of creative space. And so, yeah. Oh, is there still a limit on mobile? I mean, I'm not surprised. There's a lot of most people don't want to accidentally download something really big on their like on their like mobile data plans. But I think these days what's more common is like downloading a downloader, and then the downloader downloads something bigger later on or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, so where was I? Right. Anyway, so that's how I was handling the these loops. And then I added the ending. So this is the ending. I mentioned that for downloadable web apps. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, so you're always thinking about that stuff. The mobile is going to be is like that constant in your face, constantly asking for you. Anyway, so yeah, here's the layer mixers. We'll just call them the automation, mix automation, and that's just to add some crossfading. So I use the ADSR to crossfade the layers. I just give them. It's literally just 10 millisecond fade, and the attack and release curves are a little bit exponential. So you'll get a little bit of a power curve, but the hope is that it's not too noticeable. It's a little bit noticeable, but hope is not. I could probably look at maybe a more relaxed thing. I think this is one of those things that if I spent more time with, I'd probably I'd probably add some transition material. You know, right now this crossfade is kind of okay. It's just okay, but transition material can help smooth things out. That's one of the things. If you listen to the combat music on Odyssey, you'll hear the transition material. And so yeah, that's just because it's one of my personal little thing that hits me when I think about interactive music design. When you have a fade, there are certain types of instruments that can fade out, right? Like I back in the day was a clarinet, an oboe player, and so you can taper your like note to like a really quiet outro. So like there are instruments, right, that can fade, and so a fade does not seem unnatural when executed properly. But there are also instruments that don't fade well, and some of that has to do with the timbre of the instrument. A lot of instruments have a different timbre, different intensities, but also like drums sound terrible when they're fading. They sound like they're fading out, and unless it's specifically an instrument that has almost identical timbre going down, most drums, most membranophones do have a very different timbre when you're softening the blow on the instrument. So a fade out doesn't necessarily sound great. And so I would probably look at some transition material if I were to re-implement this this way, instead of doing that. Anyway, so this goes to my mixer. You can see I had plans for additional material. I just never got around to it. That was the laser blast pause and stuff like that. There's some transition material for that sequence. But otherwise, these envelope generators are just managing these volume levels. And then I have the ending music. And so and this can start at any bar. So basically what I've done is with this little controller here, I have this one bar subdivision trigger. So it's basically triggering every bar. And then it only succeeds when a combat state changes, or it succeeds when end battle has been called. And so in both cases, the trigger downstream goes to the appropriate place, or and actually, yeah, that's fine. And so yeah, so that's the idea, and that's how we do our transition. We keep it in the bar. Otherwise, these are the seek time ensures that they're the right timing. I was running into an issue where sometimes the MIDI clock seek time was too far. It was too far, and this was I think this is why I added the modulo here, because I think the bar was getting or the beat or something some value was exceeding the expected range. And so this seems to have fixed it. I think it was maybe momentarily there was a potential for the bar to be too far or something like that. And so yeah, that was why I added the bar max, is protect against that issue. Because I was getting some that were triggering at the very tail end, if the transition happened at the end of the sequence. There could be other edge cases that I haven't sussed out, but yeah, so let me play it. So we have some input. We have start battle, we have end battle, and then the combat state that we can change. And so from an interface perspective, we keep it pretty simple. When we start out, we have the arena ambient. So this cue will start out when the player enters the arena, and then um, when they initiate combat, we'll hit the start battle, and then it will uh, we'll go through the Golem Rising sequence, or imagine it in our beautiful imaginations. And so that will start on a bar. So now we just have the low state playing right now on its own, and you'll see the loop there. And these are just preemptively stopping things, but you can ignore them. They're not actually doing anything. Now if I change it to a 1, then we will hear the medium percussion layer playing on top of the low loop layer. There we go. And then I can go back anytime. And so that's where I would probably put that transition material, as I described before, just because it's a little bit naked, right? It's a little sudden. The start is good. The start is nice. And that's one of those things, like with drums, when you have drums, starting up a loop, a layer on like a beat or a bar is super useful. So let's go 1, and then I'll go to 2, and you can hear the high intensity. Plays sort of like an outro material, and it sort of fades out, and then it'll stop the cue. So what I'll probably do is one of the things that I'll add is, because I'm going to be taking advantage of the Metasound output subsystem, is I will probably add some outputs for the different phases, so that the Metasound can communicate back to the state tree that, hey, this state has changed, or I'm done with the intro sequence, that sort of stuff. So yeah. All right. So I feel like we're probably not going to be finishing this time around, Eric.
I'm getting pretty close. I've made good progress.
Do you want to share your progress?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
And there is there's like a final mystery that'll kind of wrap it all up, and it's a familiar one. So maybe you'll remember from however many weeks ago it was. I was able to. I ended up bypassing the gameplay ability system, and so now I just on the explosion. When you get hit by it, I'm grabbing the state tree component off of the hit actor, and I'm just calling send state tree event, and I'm giving it my tag, and I'm saying it's from the grenade.
This is great. This is exactly this, but this is the thing that we were talking about, right? That to ensure that you're reaching that particular instance of state tree, right?
Yes.
Cool.
And so in the state tree, I've got in root, I've got transition where let me enlarge this somehow. Where's my widget reflector? No shortcut. Oh,
you already have it.
Oh, it's on my other screen. No, it just popped up down there. Okay, let's.
Wow, yeah, that's great.
Make it easier for folks not on a ultra wide. So under the root, I have a transition where on event, audio status shell shocked, go to state shell shocked.
Yeah.
Pretty simple.
Yeah.
And so I just selected on event in there, gave it the tag. Looks like there's some other options here, but I was able to get a hello world printing when I entered this state. And now I'm working, this is the mystery, like how do I provide it my data asset, which I'll show you in a second, and then that distance value, which is on the grenade.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Over here. Yeah, I
you
want
wanted to transition. Yeah, that's right.
I'd like to provide this somehow, and so I'm not sure.
Yeah, so you'll need the actor, the context actor. This is actually, maybe this is, yeah, so.
Can we circle back to this after?
Yeah, sorry.
No worries. I just want to show kind of the task that I've set up for Shell Shocked.
Oh, yeah.
Because now, when we enter this state, I'm going to take this data asset and I guess let me show you the data asset first here. I've just got a few things in here. I'm giving it a name. You can add mixed stages and then kind of like your attenuation. So this is how I'll be mapping the effect, the strength of the effect between these, like kind of attenuation. And then duration. And so like the mixed stages is where you can.
So are you going to do like a dynamically create, are you going to dynamically create a mix so you have control over the intensity?
We'll get there. We'll get.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm getting excited.
So for example, let's say we want to duck a bunch of our control buses at different amounts, maybe different intensities, different durations, with different attack speeds and release times.
Yeah.
And so let's just take music, for instance. Let's say we just want to completely duck the entire thing. I can attenuate that. So the value close, and I forget, let's see. So I want the value to be 1 when you're close and 0 when you're at the edge of the attenuation. And the attack time, let's just make it pretty quick for both of them.
So that's like the intensity of the effect, right? Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
so like this is control bus value 1 when you're at the closest. Or I guess I'd want to invert that. So when you're the closest to the explosion, we want to set it all the way to 0. And then when you're at the edge of the attenuation, which is far, we want it to
okay, yeah, I guess.
smoothly,
Yeah, that makes sense.
linear interpolation. And then the release time we'll do pretty gradual, I guess, maybe 2 seconds and 5 seconds if you're far away. The inner radius of this, I'm not even sure what like some good numbers are for like the size of the level that we're in. Maybe I'll go a little smaller because it's not doing too much. And we'll do it 5 seconds just to make it obvious.
Yeah.
So I could set this up now. So that's music. And like, I could do whatever other options we have here in Lyra. Maybe weapons we'd want to duck. The one thing you'd want to avoid doing is ducking the explosion sound itself. We probably would want to
Oh, yeah, definitely.
do a separate bus for explosions and then make sure that our grenade explosion isn't getting ducked by this effect. So
Can you I actually don't remember. Can you copy those values from the previous entry?
Yes.
And then, yeah, okay.
So if I hold, well, I guess I can right click and just do copy and paste. There's also shift right mouse button to copy and shift left mouse button to paste.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So that I do that all the time.
Yeah.
And then just change this to weapons. Can do the same, paste it for Foley, I guess. And you could do as many as you want. And I'm going to copy the entire array and delete it because this is the master instance, and we want to actually create a data asset. Oops, that is a data layer that we don't want. It's weird having an editor this large now.
You overshot.
Yeah. Well, what did I call this thing? Dynamic control bus mixed data. And we'll just say default, whatever. And so I'm going to paste my array in here, and then we've got our defaults from before. And we'll say shell shocked. That's
so this could all be reused for different effects.
Like if if you have like some other. Yes, it's data driven, so very exciting stuff. I'm going to close those out now since we got it. And so back to our task. And the way that we use the data is I'm grabbing those mix stages. So each of the different control buses with the different range values is being passed into this function that I made, creating control bus mix stages. And I was in a hurry. So,
That's all right. It looks fine.
it's pretty simple. So what I'm doing is I'm getting the distance, and this is our input value for each of these ranges. And the top one is doing the value of the control bus and then the attack time and release time respectively. And so I'm taking the close and far and mapping that as our out range. So I guess probably would not want to go and change those. And then the in range would be the inner radius and the fall off distance for from the data asset.
Right.
And so that should give us what we want. Might need to revisit the logic once I've kind of got all the pieces in place. And then once we've got all of our control bus mix stages, adding them to an array, and then just calling this function create control bus mix. It's just audio modulation statics. Same with the control bus mix stage one. Those are all included in the modulation plugin. Then I'm setting a timer using the duration of that we specified inside of our data asset.
Right.
And when we're done, calling this function to deactivate the control bus mix, and then we're calling finish task so that our state tree goes back to its default state.
Nice.
Yeah. And so that much is done. I haven't gotten it to run yet because now I need to provide the data asset and the distance from somewhere, right? And that's kind of where the mystery is, where we left off.
Yes, right. Yeah. So I think what you need to do is go into your state tree task and then add a parameter, a variable called context actor, and make it an actor type. I don't know spaces.
Oh, see, I'm a space person.
Oh yeah,
Is it,
yeah.
you want to get into it?
No, I don't want to get into it. But
Okay.
make it public. I think it needs to be public. Maybe not be public. I don't know.
Instance editable.
What I want you to do is put the context actor in the category context.
That's right. These magic categories.
The magic categories.
And so I got inputs here. I remembered that much.
Yeah. So for the context actor, what you're going to do is you're going to bring it in, and then you're going to cast it to your type, your actor type.
Cast it where?
In your task.
Oh, in the task. Okay.
Yeah, the task.
I see. To
whatever.
the hero shooter. I think this is this is what I'm using.
Yeah. And then okay, hold on a second. I think then you should be able to pull parameter data off of that, right?
So, I mean, I don't really want the data for the explosion, for the shell shocked, to live on the pawn, right?
Right.
Ideally, that would come from the grenade.
Yeah. So go back to your state tree, and I think then you need to make sure you did that. Sorry.
Would I add a new context actor? That's the grenade, or?
I guess. I guess if you have a grenade instance, so the state tree lives on your hero actor, right?
Yes. So there's a state tree component here where I've set my player audio state tree here. I see parameters. There's nothing there.
Yeah. Why have I forgot? Why did I forget how to do this? This is it's too many things I've tried to fit in my brain in whatever it was, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Basically, what we're trying to do is we want the actor. So there should be. Yeah, you should be able to. Oh, you have context actor. Oh, it's appearing there.
Yeah, it's over here, and so I can give it the actor, and so now I'm passing in the actor that owns this state tree into the task.
Yeah. So now the parameter data should show up. So wherever you're storing that data, where are you
The
storing that data?
the data asset,
No, where are you storing the in the duration?
the
Or
duration.
not the duration, sorry, the distance. Wherever you're storing the distance.
So this should come from the explosion of the grenade, right? So grenade. There's a on the hit from the grenade. We
Yeah.
want to put this distance
Yeah,
into this state tree component somehow
Oh, no, well no, you would give it well, okay.
into the task.
Well no, you want it to show up on the yeah, if well, it could go to the you need to go someplace.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you could, I think, so there are global parameters on the left.
You mean in here, these?
Yeah, those are global parameters. I don't know if they're instances, but you could see if that. I mean that it'll show up there, but I guess what I'm saying is like in my mind the idea is that the context actor stores the data that you're using to influence the state. So the expectation that I have is that you would get the blast distance off of that actor, or yeah, or you would store it in some other object that state tree would retrieve it from.
Yeah.
But you could try and see. Yeah, that's how I see. Oh, I got it. You know what you can do? No. You can put it in your event. So make a custom event.
Well, see, that's what yes, I would like to do that, but let's, there's not much here to work with.
No. You can create a custom event.
Oh, really? Okay. Like
Yeah, you can create yeah. Just yeah. So new blueprint class. State tree event. Oh, state tree. Oh, you know what? You're in an older version.
No. Okay. Yeah, this is
Hold on,
5.3.
let me just make sure. Let's just take a look. I'll go. I could be completely wrong, but we'll just look on my side because I'm on 5.6 preview 1. So if I go to blueprint state tree condition evaluator task consideration. Oh no, the hold on a second. The event is a T struct instance, right? So
Yes.
you just have to make a struct.
You can just
custom
pass it in any
Yeah,
struct.
no, I think you can just make a custom struct and it'll show up in the list, right? Let me try it out real here. I'll try it out so you don't have to.
What if I want to try it?
Okay, you can try it out too.
Just gonna make a random struct, and it says, yeah, it's just expecting a state tree event structure.
Send state tree event. And then on the... Why isn't it...
Yeah, this might not be the way to... I mean, it's a way to tell us...
Oh, here we go. Yeah, so then we go...
Oh, so it's like an instance.
Yeah, here's my struct.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's my struct. And then I think the catch is the passing the data in, right? So maybe, can we split it?
Well, let me...
Or does that not work for, oh yeah, the event payload. Yeah, so we're going to recombine.
if I do this. So now I can just pass in anything as the payload.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so,
you should. Yeah, sorry, let me show your screen here. Let me go back.
we'll say grenade. And so I would choose a different payload that has the distance and the data asset. So let me just go ahead.
Well, your payload just has to be a float in this case, right?
Well, I want to pass the data asset as well,
Oh,
right?
yeah, that's
It's
okay.
specific for the.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh,
So
yeah,
I'm
that's a good idea.
gonna make a mess of my folder here, but this is going to
That's fine.
be grenade shell shocked event data. So in here, we're going to put the dynamic, whatever I called it, dynamic control bus mix settings. Data, and then the distance. So now, back over in the grenade, we're going to choose that one. Grenade shell shocked event data. Now I can choose my shell shocked data asset. And here's the rub though. How do you get?
Yeah, so that's why I was thinking sorry, go back to the the event call. Well, okay. What I was going to suggest, well, maybe you got a better idea, but what I was going to suggest on the event is split the event input, the instance struct input, and then pass your struct into the payload. So use the same struct. No. On the function call.
Oh, up here?
Yeah, so I was going to suggest. Well, hold on a second. What? Well, mine has the payload input on your on the function call. Can you compile your?
Yes.
Let's just okay. What the heck? Let me show you mine here so you can see what I've got, what I'm looking at. So here's the send state tree event function, and when I split it, I have the event payload in the middle there. And so my thinking, what I thought what you could do would be like, here's my struct.
Yeah, you would just make the payload on the graph, which would work. Yeah.
I was thinking that, and then just pass that. Oh no, it doesn't like that. Maybe it can't.
You'd want to do make. You might have to do a make node separate from that. No.
There you go. Yeah, that works. Potentially.
I mean, so what I would do is just right click and say make random struct.
Sorry, where?
On the graph, just right click and then make some sort of struct. Anything. Plug that in.
Oh, I see. I see what you got. Yeah.
And then, does it not want you? Okay, well, I guess your way would work.
Make instance struct. That's the call. Is make instanced struct is the function call. Do you have that? Oh no.
No, I do not. So I'm going to skip the distance for now then. So we'll just...
Wait, well, you just gotta... Yeah, we could... Yeah, you know what we can do is we can... because we're basically at time. We can revisit your implementation in 5.6.
Yeah.
Because 5.6 will be out... Oh, I shouldn't say that. No one ever heard that. Not like anyone wasn't expecting it.
You mean 5.6 preview 2 or something?
Sorry, I misspoke. When 5.6 comes out, we can revisit your implementation in 5.6.
Yeah. I was telling Dan before the stream that I was trying to get the 5.5 Lyra project installed, but it disappeared from my launcher, and I couldn't.
It was probably It's probably something funky with Fab. You probably have to go into Fab and like re-add it or something like that.
Yeah,
I've had a lot of weird stuff with Fab, like trying to get like I've had to go back into Fab and go, please reinstall my stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe there was something funky there.
Mm.
Like probably 5.3 was like the last time you grabbed it or whatever.
Yeah, like I was playing around with it back in the day and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so real quick then, now that I've passed in this event with a payload, how do I
Yeah.
get that payload in my state tree?
So when you say event, you have to select the event type. So
Um,
oh yeah, let me see. Oh yeah, so do you not see in your enter conditions? Oh, you don't have enter conditions. Oh, you do have entry conditions. Entry
I'm not
condition.
I'm not using them, but
Oh, I was. Oh, I see. Well, so
should
then,
I be? Should this be like a? Well, there's no like event in here, right?
well,
So
here I'll show you. Like, so it might. This is another thing. This is another thing. You got to use the. When I do required event to enter, then there it is.
okay.
And then when I
Wow.
do my BPS struct, my struct, then my data is available.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, cool. I mean that makes me look forward to having those features for next.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. We'll, we'll get it.
Yeah, just about done. It was printing properly. I did have to. It was entering the state too frequently, and it would also enter the state like if you died. And so I added
Ah. Yeah.
sending a new event like if you die, we send a status death event. That sort of
Yeah,
thing.
that's what I was thinking of doing it on the pawn instead of the player. But I guess you are doing it on the pawn, huh?
Yeah, the components on the pawn,
Okay,
but
yeah. Yeah, that's always an issue with like death is like your corpse is still is still you.
yeah.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, the other thing I found, well, event-based transitions helps, but you can also use delays. There is a task that's like a delay, an infinite delay. So you can just add it as one of the tasks.
One
And
of these.
yeah, exactly. And those can help. That's something like, for example, I mentioned, if, we can look at my thing. Just we're not going to get
Yeah.
into anything, but like this is how I've sort of laid out initially my idea for the state tree. I'm probably some devils in the details situation here, because state you want your states are going to be running tasks. You want to think about tasks. You want to sort of think things on like the task level.
Yeah.
And so, like for example, I expect my like arena combat loop. I expect to go into an intro and then hold here until, the conditions change, and then this intro sequence is gonna play, and that I'm just gonna like have a delay probably, or I'll wait or something like that. So I get stuck here until, like maybe the output subsystem is gonna cue that that sequence is done, and then
Yeah.
I can move into the correct intensity, and then I'll have probably some sort of selector for the intensity level. So I probably have multiple conditions where it's like I'll probably go back to combat, to evaluate which state I need to go into next,
Yeah.
and then or how I transition between states. So that there are some things to think about there, in terms of structuring this management. But I've sort of loosely laid it out, and then I've also used the color system here to help.
Very fancy.
It is, it helps a lot
It's
to
the
sort
little
of
things,
categorize. It is these little things that help sort of organize visually, and so yeah, that's kind of where I've gone to as like a starting point, and the desert one, what I want to do is I'm probably actually going to have two substates where when we go into desert, it'll have a task to play the queue, and then maybe the task will end when the queue's done, and then
Mhm.
it'll go into like a like a delay or something, like some kind of um, random, some way to make it so that randomly starts up again after some amount of time. But I also don't want to make it so that it gets stuck there. Like I want to make sure I can fluidly transition over to the
Right.
dark world or whatever I need to go. So there's going to be some you know work to do in even the simpler states. So yeah. Anyway, I don't know if there's more that you wanted to get into on your on your thing.
No,
I feel like I feel like we're at a point where it's like, yeah, we didn't get as far as maybe we wanted to get, but
I mean, I got pretty far. I think it's just the last little hiccups, dealing with the events and well, just being on an older version of Unreal. So
yeah, I think that's going to make a big difference. The state tree has, like, there's been a lot of improvements over the last couple versions, and so that's actually one of the impetuses for me to get into state tree in 5.5 was just like I think there was a bunch of stuff in 5.5 that they'd added, and even refined here in 5.6 preview 1. So yeah, I think that it's worth figuring out how to get Lyra updated on your thing so you can
hmm
try it out in 5.6 and play around with the latest.
yeah, I do have to like kind of question at this point, like if this is a way that I would actually want to do things, or if this is
Oh yeah, sure.
it
Well,
is
your
a way you
state's
can do
very
it.
simple, right? I mean, there isn't like you could potentially just you could have like a gameplay queue script or whatever that just runs
Well, so
your
the
thing, right?
the thing that you could do with this setup is have multiple like status conditions that your player can listen for,
Right.
and when those things happen, it's like it's just a task, right? And so
Yeah.
all of your mixing logic is compartmentalized and pretty easy to maintain and
Yeah.
encapsulated. So those are all really nice things, and that would be a lot better than having like a master like mixing blueprint where it's
Yeah.
like that gets to be kind of tough to wrangle. So I could see this being useful in the right context,
Yeah.
and I think once we get it up and running, maybe we can um, try adding a second state, and
Right.
just play around with it a bit. But I like where it's heading at least.
Yeah, I think one thing that has been a little bit of a challenge for me is divorcing my sort of design patterns from something like blueprints, or even when I'm working in the meta sound. Like, there is a temptation to sort of say, like, oh, everything. Like, I can, because you can do state management and evaluation in both of those spaces pretty
Mm.
easily. Some places harder than others. Like, meta sounds doesn't always lend itself very well to state management. But so in other words, thinking in terms of an external state manager is a little bit of a change in the way that I think
Yeah.
you're used to thinking about things. But
I
I
mean,
think, yeah,
there's kind of a curveball with this setup is like, well, okay, so what happens if we have an underwater state, where we muffle the sounds, and
yeah,
then what happens if you get hit by a grenade and you're shell shocked while you're underwater? Like, can
yeah,
State Tree handle multiple states like that?
right,
I don't know. And so that might be where just using a gameplay queue setup,
right,
or even just a component that gets added to the player and destroys itself after the time is up. Like that is like a really simple kind of just turn it on, turn it off sort of thing, without kind of doing a whole like state management asset setup and stuff.
right,
But you know, it's good to. I'm glad we're diving into this stuff because I'm sure I'll find ways to use it, if not
definitely.
for this sort of thing.
I think one of the things that we talked about before possibly is like the idea of like multiple concurrent state trees
Mm.
where where it's like it could be a component that you just add and then remove, but the component itself could have some state management on it, right?
It
I,
could be a
I
safety component.
well, I guess what I'm getting at is like there, like a lot of what you've described so far has been very simple in terms of state, like it's either on or
Yeah,
off,
exactly.
and I think that state tree might be something that gets a little bit more like its utility becomes clearer when you have more complex state that you're
Hmm.
trying to manage. And it could be like in my situation where um, we haven't talked about this, but state tree, at least in the latest version, I don't know exactly on 5.3, but state tree in the latest version can support sub state trees. And so
Hmm.
it might be something where it's like I actually could create a state tree for the arena music management, right? But then like how use a higher level state tree
Sure.
for
Yeah.
just which cue do I play?
Yeah.
Which, in other words, which state tree do I invoke to then manage the music underneath that? So I think that I think that sort of proposes a more complex
Yeah,
state,
for sure.
yeah, scheme. All right. Well, it's awesome. It's always fun hanging out and doing stuff
Yeah.
and trying to figure out things and googling things. I hope everyone at home has enjoyed hanging out with us and googling things,
Learning
um,
new stuff every week.
learning new stuff. We gotta make sure we get our sufficient biography for
We're
Eric.
rolling the credits.
We're rolling the credits. Don't forget this. I forgot. Like this is the int main to begin play. Is the most useful video on Unreal that I've ever seen. And then yeah, shout out to Ed again for doing awesome work on the Valley of the Ancient project. Yeah, and hope everyone else has had a great time.
Yeah.
And look, with that, the one last chat person. I'm trying to know more about Audio World, UE. Cool. Voice chat, that's a whole other space
Yeah.
that I have probably avoided. Thanks for joining us, Charles, always, Steven, all the usual folks. Hope you all have a great. Oh yeah, I won't be back next week. I should mention that. I won't be back next week, but we'll pick it up afterward. And y'all have until then, have a really, I don't know, what's a good sign off? Have a really good technical audio time. That was awful.
Have a good weekend.
Have a good weekend. Enjoy yourself, live life, etc.